Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're embarking on a really crucial journey, trying to cut through all the noise,
Yeah, all the headlines and the chaos.
Exactly, to get to what truly drives humanity. And our guide for this is going to be the insights of Dr. Danielle Ganser.
Some really powerful ideas in there.
Definitely. So our mission here is to pull out the vital stuff from the material you've shared, really help you navigate these complex global events with maybe a bit more clarity and hopefully a renewed sense of purpose.
Right. We're focusing on that almost universal human desire for peace.
And why different perspectives are so critical in conflicts.
And crucially, how we can actually build unity even when things feel so polarized.
Yeah, getting past the surface level into the heart of it all.
Exactly.
So Dr. Ganser kicks us off with this observation it's so simple, it's almost radical. He says, most people don't want wars, but a bottle of wine and to swim in the sea.
Huh. I mean, it sounds basic, but there's such truth in that, isn't there? It's grounded.
Totally. It just cuts through all the geopolitics. A bottle of wine, a swim. I think most of us can relate to that wherever we are.
And that's his point. It is universal. Ganser talks about how 99% of humanity, that's the number he uses, craves peace, security, a good life for their families.
99%. That's staggering.
It is. And it transcends borders, religion, ideology, everything. Tehran, Tel Aviv, Kyiv, Moscow, wherever. That basic wish for a decent daily life for your kids to be okay, that's consistent. It's like the fundamental human setting.
Okay, so if that desire is so deep and widespread, 99%, what goes wrong? How does Ganser explain the conflicts that keep happening?
Well, that's the contrast he draws. He pits this huge yearning for peace against what he calls a very small group in various countries that always causes a lot of unrest.
A small group.
Yeah, a tiny minority, relatively speaking, that he argues creates this imbalance. Their actions, their interests somehow escalate things into conflict, overriding what the vast majority actually wants.
That's a really stark contrast. And it leads us right into looking at how conflicts actually, play out. Ganser looks at recent events, like the Israeli attack on Iran back on June 13th, 2025.
Right, and he draws a direct parallel to the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
How so?
He frames both as violations of the UN ban on violence.
Ah, okay. Remind us about that ban.
So it was established in 1945. Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the UN Charter basically says all 193 member states shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force. It's supposed to be the cornerstone of international law.
Supposed to be. But Ganser points out the framing difference, right?
Exactly. One action gets called a preventive strike, maybe, while another is labeled an invasion.
So the words used, the narrative, can completely change how we see it, even if the core action using force violates that same UN principle.
Precisely. And this is why Ganser argues so strongly against anyone claiming the only correct view. He thinks media, education, they should be fostering diverse perspectives, not pushing single narratives.
Which leads to the uncomfortable question, who benefits?
Well, yeah, Ganser is quite direct about this. He observes that the defense industry consistently profits from war. It's almost a given.
We saw that with Ukraine, didn't we? Arms stocks.
Absolutely. Companies like Rheinmetall, their stock prices hit record highs. It's just a stark reminder of the economic engine running alongside these conflicts.
The money side is clear. But what about the nations themselves, the ones caught in the middle? Ganser talks about sovereignty, using Germany as an example.
Yes, Germany's sovereignty, or maybe the limits on it, becomes a really critical case study for him.
What does he point to?
Well, a couple of things. He highlights the claims around the Nord Stream pipeline destruction, the ones reported by Seymour Hersh.
The claim that the U.S. president ordered it.
Yeah. And Ganser's point is, if that's true, it shows a profound lack of, let's say, mutual respect within NATO, an ally attacking another's vital energy supply.
That's putting it mildly.
And perhaps even more worrying, he discusses the New York Times report about something called Task Force Dragon in Wiesbaden.
Okay, what was that about?
According to the report, Wiesbaden in Germany was used as a base for coordinating Ukrainian military operations. American and Ukrainian officers meeting there.
Coordinating what, specifically?
Allegedly, the U.S. provided targeting coordinates for Ukrainian forces using American weapons like HIMARS, ANAC-US.
Wait, enabling strikes? Where?
Enabling strikes on Russian targets, even inside Russia itself.
Hold on. American weapons, coordinated by American generals on German soil, used to kill Russians inside Russia. Is that the claim?
That's the claim Ganser highlights from the reporting, yes. And he stresses how incredibly dangerous that is. He points out that this kind of direct coordination leading to Russian deaths in Russia, that didn't even happen during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962.
Wow, that's a serious escalation.
And the kicker, according to Ganser, based on the reporting, is that the German government, the German parliament, they apparently weren't consulted. Which, if true, points to a major limitation on Germany's actual sovereignty and puts the country in, well, a very dangerous position, a lack of democratic control over decisions with potentially huge consequences.
With all this, the complexity, the stakes, the alleged lack of control, it's easy to get cynical. Some people might think, are these wars just distractions? From other things like pushing digital currencies or something.
Yeah, Ganser addresses that theory.
Right.
He dismisses it. He calls the idea that wars are just deliberate distractions, not serious or confirmable. For him, conflicts like Ukraine, Iran, Gaza, they are real wounds on the planet. They need healing, not explaining away as diversions. We have to face them directly.
Right, so not distractions, real wounds needing healing. If the vast majority want peace, and it's not just some cynical ploy, what's the actual path forward? How do we get to understanding and unity?
This is where Ganser introduces a key concept from peace research, Geschichtenabgleich.
Geschichtenabgleich, what does that translate to?
Roughly story comparison, or maybe narrative reconciliation.
Okay, what does it mean in practice?
It means real peace only emerges when all perspectives, all sides of the story are taken seriously and laid out side by side.
All sides. Even the ones we find difficult or, frankly, abhorrent.
Yes. Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Iran, Israel, Palestine, any conflict. It involves truly listening to how each side sees the situation, what their grievances are, what their story is, without immediate judgment, just trying to understand their narrative.
Story comparison. That sounds incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
But maybe essential. How do you even start that process? How do you get people to listen?
Well, on an individual level, Ganser urges active information gathering, go beyond our usual Western media bubbles.
How?
He literally suggests things like checking out perspectives from Iran, Russia, China, India, maybe on platforms like YouTube. Seek out how they see events.
To get a more complete picture.
Exactly. He argues that just dismissing other views as barbarian or propaganda is, quote, a completely false analysis. Every country, every group has its perspective, its concerns. He mentions the BRICS states, for example. We need to take their viewpoints seriously, too. It's about expanding our understanding, not digging deeper into our own trench.
So break down the narrative walls first, and then presumably the goal is cooperation, because violence just cycles.
Absolutely. Ganser is clear. Violence is doomed in the long run. Cooperation is the only sustainable path. He specifically mentions Europe and Russia, for instance. He believes Europe can only find real peace with Russia if it accepts Russia as part of Europe, geographically and perhaps culturally, stretching beyond the Urals.
A shift from confrontation to, well, acknowledging reality.
Acknowledging shared geography, shared destiny, perhaps. Integration over constant opposition.
And this all feeds into what Ganser calls the human family principle. Right?
Yes. It's such a core idea for him. So simple, but so powerful.
That we all belong to one common human family. Iranians, Israelis, Ukrainians, Russians, Germans, Americans, everyone.
It cuts right through the divisions. He argues that splitting into camps, like being rigidly for Russia or for Ukraine, doesn't actually help anyone. It just fuels emotional escalation.
Right. Nationalism might be fun for, like, the World Cup.
Exactly. Fun for sports, he says, but dangerous when applied to conflict between nations. Because the core of this human family, it simply wants to live.
Back to the bottle of wine and swimming in the sea.
Pretty much. People want to live, not kill or be killed. It's about remembering that shared fundamental desire beneath all the flags and the rhetoric.
So, okay, this is all resonating. But what does it mean for us, for the person listening right now? How do we actually contribute to this path to peace?
Ganser really emphasizes that peace isn't just top-down from governments, it's carried by people. Yes, initiatives for peace, for cultural exchange, for international friendship. They need our support. He believes every single person contributes through their own behavior, their own attitude. It starts small, with each of us. How we talk, how we listen, how we choose to see the other.
And importantly, he warns against fear, right? even with scary scenarios, potential escalations.
Yes, definitely. Don't be driven by fear, even when things look dire, like worrying about nuclear war or a point of no return. He reminds us that even illegal wars don't automatically mean the world is completely finished or abfackled, as he puts it, burned down. We need to stay calm.
How do we stay calm when things seem so precarious?
He suggests cultivating gratitude for the earth being fundamentally a wonderful place. Focusing on that appreciation can stop us from getting discouraged, from losing heart when things are tough.
Focusing on the good that still exists.
Right. Remember, there are 8 billion of us. And if Ganser's right about the 99%, the vast majority want no war, no destruction. They want to earn a living, tend their gardens, see their kids get educated. The simple things. Hold on to that belief in basic human goodness.
Okay, so let's try and pull this together. Our deep dive today, guided by Dr. Ganser's insights, it really highlights that despite all the conflict and danger, the overwhelming majority of people, that 99%, truly desire peace, security, a good life.
Yeah, that's the foundation.
And the path forward involves, well, hard work, open dialogue through that story comparison idea.
Actively seeking out different perspectives, getting outside our echo chambers.
Embracing our shared humanity, that human family principle, choosing connection over division.
Cooperation over confrontation, reconciliation over violence. It's a fundamental shift in approach.
And it's not just theoretical, is it? It's a call to action for each of us. Step out of fear, lean into understanding. So for you listening, here's something to maybe chew on. If 99% of us genuinely want peace, what's one concrete action, even a small one, that you can take today? How can you foster a bit more understanding, a bit more connection in your own life, your own conversations?
What story could you seek out? Whose perspective could you make an effort to really listen to?
How can you contribute in your own way to shifting away from fear and that old destructive logic of violence towards recognizing our shared human family? Something to think about.